Hansol Kim pressed his gloved hand against the rover's control panel and watched the dusty lunar landscape roll past his window. 20 years of space missions had made him careful about everything. Check the oxygen, check the power, check the crude. Always check twice. The south pole of the moon looked the same as it had for millions of years. Gray dust, dark craters, and endless silence. Hansol's job was to find good spots for the new mining operations. Earth needed more rare metals, and the moon had plenty of them buried under all that dust. His rover's scanner made a soft beeping sound. Hansol stopped the vehicle and looked at the screen. Something metal was down there, about 10 meters under the surface. The readings looked strange, too regular to be natural rock. "Base, this is Hansol," he said into his radio. "I'm getting odd readings near grid 77 Alpha." Dongwu Li's voice came back from Luna Base. "What kind of readings?" "Metal deposits, but the pattern is too organized. Looks artificial." There was a pause. "Artificial how?" Hansol studied the scanner display. The metal formed straight lines and perfect angles. Nature didn't work that way. "Like someone built something down there." "That's impossible." "Run the scan again." Hansol ran 3 more scans. Each one showed the same thing. Geometric shapes made of unknown metal, buried deep in the lunar soil. The structure was huge, maybe the size of a football stadium. "Dongwu, I need Mi-young Park out here and bring the excavation equipment." 2 hours later, Mi-young Park arrived with a team and digging robots. She was the best xenoarchaeologist on Luna Base, though she had never found any alien artifacts. Before, nobody had. "Show me what you found," she said, climbing out of her transport. Hansol pointed to the scanner readings. Mi-young studied them for a long time. Her eyes grew wide behind her helmet visor. "This can't be real," she whispered. "That's what I thought. But it's there." Mi-young set up her own equipment and ran more detailed scans. The results were the same. Something artificial was buried under their feet, something that wasn't made by humans. "We need to dig," she said. The excavation robots worked for 6 hours. They removed tons of lunar dust and rock, going deeper and deeper. Finally, one of the robots hit something hard. Hansol and Mi-young rappelled down into the hole the robots had made. Their helmet lights cut through the darkness. At the bottom, they saw smooth metal walls covered in strange symbols. "My God," Mi-young breathed. "It's real." The walls were made of some kind of black metal that didn't reflect their lights. The symbols looked like writing, but unlike any language from Earth. They formed complex patterns that seemed to flow across the surface. Hansol approached one of the walls and touched it with his gloved hand. The metal was completely smooth and felt warm even through his suit. That was impossible. Nothing on the moon should be warm. "Mi-young, look at this." She turned her light toward where Hansol was pointing. Deep inside the structure, they could see a faint glow. Something was producing light down there. "The power readings," Hansol said. "This thing is still active." They found an opening in the wall that looked like a doorway. It was perfectly sized for something about as tall as a human. The glow was coming from somewhere beyond that doorway. Mi-young took readings with her instruments. "The air inside registers as breathable," she said. "But that's impossible. There's no atmosphere on the moon. Unless this place has its own life support system." They looked at each other through their helmet visors. This discovery would change everything. Proof that intelligent aliens had visited the solar system. Evidence that humans were not alone. But the lights inside bothered Hansol. They pulsed in slow, regular patterns, like a heartbeat, or like something breathing. "We should go inside," Mi-young said. Hansol checked his radiation detector. The needle showed normal background levels. Then, as they moved closer to the doorway, something strange happened. The needle began dropping. Not because there was less radiation, but because the structure seemed to be absorbing it. "That's not possible," he muttered. As soon as Hansol's boots crossed the threshold into the structure, the lights inside grew brighter. The pulsing became faster, more urgent. It was definitely responding to their presence. The interior was a vast chamber with walls that curved up into darkness. More symbols covered every surface, and they seemed to glow with their own light. In the center of the chamber stood something that looked like a control panel, covered in the same flowing symbols. "Hansol," Mi-young called. "Look at this." She was standing near one of the walls, staring at a section of symbols that were moving, actually changing and shifting before their eyes. "The writing is alive," she said. Hansol joined her. The symbols formed new patterns as they watched, creating sequences that looked almost like mathematics, numbers and equations that he could almost understand. "It's trying to communicate," he realized. The lights in the chamber pulsed brighter, as if agreeing with him. Then new symbols appeared on the walls around them. These ones showed pictures instead of abstract writing, stars, planets, and what looked like spacecraft traveling between them. "It's showing us star maps," Mi-young whispered. One of the images focused on a familiar pattern of stars. Earth's solar system. The image zoomed in to show a blue planet with a single moon. Their home. The structure had been watching Earth. Hansol's radio crackled to life. "Hansol, this is base. We're detecting massive energy readings from your location. What's happening down there?" Hansol looked around at the glowing walls and shifting symbols. The lights were getting brighter every minute, and new patterns kept appearing. Whatever this place was, it was waking up after a very long sleep. "Dong-Wu," he said into his radio. "You're going to want to see this. And contact Earth. Tell them we found something." "Found what?" Hansol looked at the star maps on the walls, at the symbols that moved like living things, at the lights that responded to human presence. After millions of years of silence, something was finally ready to talk, proof that we're not alone. 3 days later, Luna Base looked like a busy construction site. Ships arrived every few hours, bringing scientists and equipment from Earth. The discovery of alien ruins had made everyone very excited and very nervous. Hansol stood outside the excavation site, watching teams of researchers hurry back and forth. The hole they had dug was now much larger, and they had built a temporary shelter over it to protect the ruins from space dust. "This is getting out of hand," said Hye Jin-yoon, the military security chief. She had arrived that morning with a team of armed guards. "We should seal this place until we understand what we're dealing with." Hansol shook his head. "We can't learn anything by hiding from it. We don't know if it's safe. That thing has been sending signals into space for 3 days straight." She was right about the signals. Ever since Hansol and Mi-young had entered the ruins, the structure had been broadcasting something toward deep space. The messages were too complex for anyone to understand, but they were definitely artificial. Mi-young Park climbed out of the excavation shaft, her face excited behind her helmet visor. "Hansol, you need to see what we found." They descended into the ruins together. The main chamber was now full of equipment and researchers. Portable lights had been set up everywhere, but they weren't really needed. The alien structure was glowing, brighter than ever. "The scans show this place goes much deeper," Mi-young said, "at least 2 kilometers down into the moon's core. And there are other chambers, dozens of them." Jae-won Nam, a quantum physicist from Earth, looked up from his instruments. "The energy readings are incredible. This structure is drawing power from somewhere, but we can't figure out where." Hansol walked over to the central control panel. The symbols were still moving, still changing, but now they seemed more organized, like they were trying to say something specific. "Has anyone tried touching the control panel?" he asked. "Are you crazy?" Hyojin said. "We don't know what it might do." But Hansol was already reaching toward the glowing symbols. The moment his gloved hand made contact, the entire chamber filled with light. The walls came alive with moving pictures, stars, galaxies, and ships traveling between them. "It's a historical record," Mi-young breathed. "It's showing us what happened." The images showed a civilization of tall, thin beings with large eyes and long fingers. They looked almost human, but different in important ways. The pictures showed them building great cities and traveling to distant worlds. Then something changed in the story. The images showed darkness spreading across space, consuming planets and stars. The tall beings were running away from something terrible. They were refugees, Han Sol realized. The images shifted to show the beings building structures like this one on many different worlds. Monitoring stations, warning systems, places where they could watch for whatever was chasing them. Jae-won was taking readings from his instruments. The carbon dating on the materials around this site suggests it's about 50,000 years old. This was built before human civilization even existed. But why the moon? Mi-young asked. Why would they build a monitoring station here? The control panel seemed to hear her question. New images appeared on the walls. Earth, young and primitive, with early humans just learning to make tools. The aliens had been watching humanity grow and develop for thousands of years. We're being monitored, Hyejin said grimly. This whole time something has been watching us. But Han Sol was studying the newest images on the walls. They showed human spacecraft, space stations, and colonies. The story was continuing right up to the present day. Not just monitoring, he said. Waiting. Waiting for what? The answer came in the form of new pictures. Humans spreading across the solar system. Human technology growing more advanced. And something else lurking at the edges of the images. Dark shapes moving through deep space. They were waiting for us to become advanced enough, Han Sol said. Advanced enough to help fight whatever they were running from. So-jin Choi, the communications specialist, looked up from her equipment. I'm picking up a response to our signals. Something is transmitting back from the outer solar system. From where? Hyejin demanded. The Kuiper Belt. Multiple sources, all using the same frequency as these ruins. Mi-young's eyes widened. There are more of these stations. They built a whole network. The alien control panel pulsed brighter, as if confirming what she said. New star maps appeared on the walls showing dozens of monitoring stations scattered throughout the solar system. Most of them had been dormant for thousands of years. But now they were waking up. Why now? Han Sol asked the glowing symbols. What's changed? The answer came in the form of telescope images transmitted from Earth. Long-range sensors had detected something unusual at the very edge of the solar system. Objects that weren't planets or asteroids or comets. Objects that were moving too fast and in two straight lines to be natural. Something is coming, Jae-won said quietly. The alien images showed the same thing. Dark shapes approaching from the spaces between stars. The same darkness that had driven the tall beings to build these warning stations 50,000 years ago. Hyejin grabbed her radio. This is Security Chief Yoon. I need an immediate conference with Earth Command. We have a code black situation. But Han Sol was still watching the wall images. The story wasn't over yet. The pictures showed the approaching darkness, but they also showed something else. Human ships armed and ready. The aliens weren't just warning Earth about the threat, they were asking for help. They want us to fight, he said. Mi-young looked at the images of human spacecraft preparing for battle. Fight what? The control panel pulsed once more, and a final image appeared on the walls. It showed Earth, beautiful and blue, surrounded by the darkness. But in this picture, the darkness was not winning. Human ships and alien technology were working together, driving back the threat. It was either a promise or a prophecy. Whatever is coming, Han Sol said. They think we can stop it. The lights in the chamber grew brighter still, and the signals, being broadcast into space, became stronger. Across the solar system, other monitoring stations were responding, adding their voices to the call. Humanity was no longer alone, but that meant they were no longer safe either. The communications room at Luna Base had never been so busy. Screens showed data from monitoring stations all across the solar system. Mars, Jupiter's moons, the asteroid belt, and even distant Pluto. All of them were transmitting the same urgent signals that had started at the moon ruins. Han Sol watched Tae-hyun Shin work at his computer. The linguist had been trying to decode the alien messages for a week. His screen was covered with symbols and mathematical equations that made Han Sol's head hurt. Any progress? Han Sol asked. Tae-hyun rubbed his tired eyes. It's like trying to learn a language and mathematics at the same time. but I think I'm starting to understand the basic patterns. Yoon-seo Lim looked up from her workstation. The AI specialist had been trying to create a computer program that could translate the alien signals. My neural networks are finding similarities to human communication patterns. Whatever sent these messages thinks in ways that are almost like us. Mi-young Park rushed into the room, her face excited. I just got back from the ruins. The symbols are becoming more complex but also more familiar. It's like they're learning to communicate with us. That was the strangest part of the whole situation. The alien messages were changing. Each day they became a little easier to understand, as if the intelligence behind them was studying human language and adapting. Show them the breakthrough, Yoon-seo said. Tae-hyun pulled up a new screen. This morning, we received this message. It's different from all the others. The screen showed a series of simple symbols, a circle with a dot in the center, 2 circles, 3 circles. It was counting. Basic mathematics, Han-sol said. Right. Then it got more complex. Tae-hyun showed more symbols. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, then geometry. Finally, something that looked like physics equations. It's teaching us its language, Mi-young realized. Or testing to see how smart we are, Yoon-seo added. The next message had arrived an hour later. This time the symbols weren't just mathematics. They showed pictures, a star, a planet, living, creatures, and then something that made everyone's blood run cold. Darkness, moving between the stars, consuming everything in its path. It's trying to warn us about something, Tae-hyun said. Han-sol studied the images. They were similar to what they had seen in the ruins, but more detailed. The darkness wasn't just empty space. It was something alive, something intelligent, something that fed on entire civilizations. What does it call this thing? The closest translation I can find is the silence. It's something that moves through the galaxy, destroying advanced civilizations. The communication system suddenly came alive with new signals. This time they weren't coming from the other monitoring stations. They were coming from much farther away. Deep space transmission, Sojin announced from her station. Origin point is beyond the Kuiper Belt. The message was longer and more complex than any they had received before. When Tae-hyun ran it through his translation program, the results made everyone in the room go quiet. It says, "Greetings, young ones. The silence has found you. We have been waiting for you to grow strong enough to hear this message. Time is short. Will you stand with us?" Han-sol felt his heart pounding. This was it. First contact with an alien intelligence. But instead of a peaceful meeting, they were being asked to join a war. "Can we respond?" he asked. Tae-hyun and Yoon-seo worked together to create a reply using the mathematical language they had learned. The message was simple. "We hear you. What do you need us to do?" The response came back in minutes. This time it included detailed star charts and technical information that made the scientists gasp. "They're giving us the locations of all the monitoring stations," Mi-young said, "and instructions on how to activate them." Activate them for what? Yoon-seo was reading through the technical data. "It looks like a defense network. Each station can generate some kind of energy field. If we activate all of them at the same time, we could create a barrier around the entire solar system," Tae-hyun finished. But the alien message contained a warning too. The silence was already approaching. Long-range telescopes from Earth had confirmed what the monitoring stations had detected. Dark objects were moving through the outer solar system, too large and too fast to be natural. "How long do we have?" Han-sol asked. Sojin checked her calculations. Based on their current speed and trajectory, maybe 6 months before they reach the inner planets. The communication system activated again. This time, the message was broadcasting on every frequency at once, strong enough to reach Earth directly. "We are the keepers of light," the message began. "For 50,000 years we have watched your species grow and learn. You have reached the threshold. The silence comes for you, as it came for us, as it has come for countless others. Most civilizations hide and are consumed. Some fight and are destroyed. Very few choose to stand together. What will humanity choose? The message included images of other worlds, other species that had faced the same choice. Some had tried to hide their planets behind energy shields and camouflage. The silence had found them anyway. Others had fought alone with their armies and weapons. They had been overwhelmed, but a few, a very few, had joined together with other species. They had combined their technology and their courage. Some of them had survived. They're offering us a partnership, Han Solo realized. Their technology and our... What? What do we have that they need? The answer came in the next part of the message. Images of human space missions, human colonies, human wars and explorations. The aliens had been studying humanity for thousands of years, and they had seen something that interested them. Adaptability, Mi-young said. Humans are good at changing, and learning and trying new things. And stubbornness, Tae-hyun added. Most species give up when the odds are bad. Humans keep fighting. The final part of the message was an invitation. The aliens wanted to meet face to face, not on Earth where billions of people might panic, but at the moon ruins. The original monitoring station would serve as the first embassy between humans and the keepers of light. Han Solo looked around the room at his colleagues. They were scared. He could see it in their eyes. But they were also excited. This was the greatest moment in human history. So, he said, do we accept? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dongwoo's voice crackled over the intercom from the main command center. Han Solo, you need to see this. The ruins are doing something new. They rushed outside and looked toward the excavation site. The shelter they had built over the alien structure was glowing like a star. Bright light was pouring out of every opening, visible even in the harsh lunar sunlight, and the light was pulsing in a rhythm that looked almost like a heartbeat. The keepers of light were coming home. The alien stood 8 feet tall and moved like flowing water. Its skin was pale silver, and its large black eyes reflected the lights of the moon base like mirrors. When it spoke, the words appeared as glowing symbols in the air that Tae-hyun's translation program converted to English. I am called by stars. The symbols read, I am the last keeper of this system. Han Solo tried not to stare, but it was impossible. After a lifetime of wondering if humans were alone in the universe, he was sitting across a table from an alien being. They were meeting in the ruins, which had been transformed into something like a conference room. You said you're the last, Mi-young said carefully. What happened to the others? The alien's eyes dimmed. The silence found our homeworlds 3,000 years ago. I was away, maintaining the monitoring stations. When I returned, there was nothing left but empty space. The translated words appeared faster as Called by Stars continued. We were once a great civilization. We had colonies on 1,000 worlds, ships that could cross the galaxy in days. But we made the same mistake that many species make. What? Mistake? Han Solo asked. We thought we were safe because we were advanced. We thought our technology would protect us. We did not understand that the silence feeds on advancement itself. New images appeared on the walls around them, showing Called by Stars, people at the height of their power. Their cities were beautiful, their ships elegant, their art magnificent. Then the images showed the silence arriving, dark shapes that seemed to absorb light itself. The silence is not like other enemies, the alien explained. It does not want territory or resources. It consumes the complexity that intelligent life creates. Art, science, culture, technology, all of it becomes food for the silence. Jae-won spoke up from where he was taking readings with his instruments. How is that possible? How can something eat ideas and technology? Because the silence exists partially outside normal space and time. It feeds on information itself, on the patterns that make civilizations unique. When it consumes a species, that species never existed. All trace of them vanishes from the universe. The room fell silent. Han Solo tried to understand what that meant. Not just death, but complete erasure from reality itself. But some species have fought it successfully, he said. You showed us images of victories. Called by Stars' eyes brightened slightly. Yes, Species that work together, that combine their strengths, can sometimes drive the silence away. But it requires perfect cooperation and absolute trust. Why did you choose us? Mi Young asked. Humans have barely left their solar system. We're not advanced like you were. That is exactly why we chose you. The alien gestured to the walls, which now showed images of human history, wars, explorations, scientific discoveries, art. Advanced species become set in their ways. They develop the same solutions, think the same thoughts. But humans are still growing. You adapt quickly. You try impossible things. Han Sol thought about human history. Called by Stars was right. Humans had always succeeded by being unpredictable, by refusing to give up even when the situation looked hopeless. What do you need from us? He asked. The monitoring stations can create a defensive barrier around your solar system. But they need to be activated by living minds. My people built them to require cooperation between different species. No single race can operate the network alone. Taehyun looked up from his translation work. How many stations are there? 47 in this system. Each one must be activated at exactly the same time, by teams of both humans and keepers working together. But there is only one of me. The problem was obvious. They needed more keepers, but Called by Stars was the last one in the solar system. Are there others elsewhere? Mi Young asked. Yes, small groups of survivors scattered across the galaxy. But the silence hunts us constantly. Most are in deep hiding. Can you contact them? Called by Stars hesitated. If I send signals to summon them, the silence will detect the transmissions. It will know exactly where we are and how many of us are gathered here. Han Sol understood. Calling for help would also call the silence directly to Earth. How long before the silence arrives, whether we signal or not? He asked. 6 of your months. And how long would it take the other keepers to get here if you called them? 3 months. So they would have 3 months to prepare for a battle that would decide the fate of humanity. If they failed, both humans and the remaining keepers would be erased from existence forever. There's something else you need to know, Called by Stars continued. The silence learns from every encounter. It has faced defensive networks before and found ways to defeat them. This time will be different only if we can do something it doesn't expect. What kind of something? Han Sol asked. The alien's eyes seemed to smile, though its face didn't change expression. Something very human. Over the next few hours, Called by Stars explained the technical details of the defense network. Each monitoring station would need to be staffed by mixed teams of humans and keepers. The stations would generate interlocking energy fields that would make it impossible for the silence to feed on the solar system. But the energy requirements were enormous. The network would drain power from every human colony, every space station, every ship. And if even one station failed, the entire system would collapse. The biggest risk, Called by Stars explained, is that humans will panic when they learn the truth. Fear makes cooperation impossible. Han Sol knew the alien was right. When people learned that an unstoppable enemy was coming to erase humanity from existence, many would want to hide or run away. Some might even try to surrender. We need to tell them the truth gradually, Mi Young said. Start with the governments and military leaders. Let them prepare the public. And we need to make sure they understand this isn't hopeless, Taehyun added. Other species have survived. We can too. Called by Stars created new images on the walls. This time they showed the defense network operating at full power. The solar system surrounded by a shell of energy that looked like a second sun. The silence approaching, probing the defenses, then retreating. If we succeed, the alien said, humanity will join the community of free species. You will have access to technology and knowledge from across the galaxy. Your civilization will grow beyond anything you can imagine. And if we fail, the walls went dark. Then the silence will be stronger than ever, and the remaining free species will be defenseless. Han Sol looked around at his colleagues. They were frightened, but determined. This was why humans had evolved to explore and take risks. For moments like this. When do we start? He asked. Called by Stars raised one long arm, and symbols appeared in the air. The alien was already composing the signal that would summon the Other keepers to Earth, we start now, the translation read, and we pray that humanity is as stubborn as I believe you to be. The signal went out an hour later. Across the galaxy, hidden keepers received the message and began their desperate journey to the solar system. But other things received the signal, too. In the darkness between stars, the silence stirred and turned its attention toward a small yellow star with 9 planets. It had been a long time since so many species had gathered in one place. The hunt was beginning. Hansol floated in the command center of Defense Station Luna 7, watching status reports from 46 other stations across the solar system. 3 months had passed since Called by Stars had sent the signal, and the keepers had arrived just as promised. 23 survivors from different parts of the galaxy. Each one was the last of their species, carrying the memories and knowledge of entire civilizations that the silence had consumed. They looked different, some tall like Called by Stars, others short and thick, some that barely looked solid, but they all had the same haunted look in their eyes. Station Mars 3 reports ready, announced young Mi Seo, the president of the United Earth Council. She had insisted on personally staffing one of the stations, saying that if humanity was going to make it stand, the leaders should be on the front lines. Station Jupiter 12 reports ready, came another voice. One by one, all 47 stations checked in. Each one was staffed by a mixed team of humans and keepers, just as the defense network required. It had taken months of preparation, but somehow they had done it. The hardest part had been telling the public. When the news broke that aliens existed and an enemy was coming to destroy Earth, riots had broken out in dozens of cities. Some religious groups declared it was the end times. Some governments tried to build secret shelters for their leaders. But humanity had surprised everyone, including themselves. Instead of falling apart, people had come together. Volunteers from every country had signed up to help build the defenses. Scientists shared research freely. Even old enemies had agreed to work side by side. It's like nothing I've ever seen, Byung-ho Kang had told Han Sol. The Earth Defense Force Admiral was commanding the human response from Station Earth Prime. Humans arguing about everything except the one thing that matters. When the aliens said we were stubborn, they were being polite. Now the network was ready. Energy flowed between all 47 stations, creating an invisible shell around the entire solar system. On his displays, Hansol could see the field strength readings. They were exactly where Called by Stars had said they needed to be. Contact on long-range sensors, reported So-Jin from her monitoring station. The silence has arrived. Hansol felt his stomach tighten. For 3 months, they had prepared for this moment. Now it was here. The enemy appeared on the main screen as dark shapes that seemed to absorb the light from nearby stars. There were dozens of them, each one the size of a small moon. They moved through space like living shadows, leaving trails of nothingness behind them. All stations, this is Han Sol at Luna 7, he broadcast. Remember your training. Stay calm, follow the procedures, and trust your partner. At each station, human and keeper teams worked together at control panels, similar to the one in the original ruins. The aliens had taught the humans how to read the flowing symbols and operate the complex systems, but it still required perfect cooperation. Energy field at maximum strength, called Yunseo from the technical station. The barrier is holding steady. The silence reached the edge of the solar system and stopped. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then tentacles of pure darkness began probing the energy field, testing its strength. Field strength dropping on the outer perimeter, J1 reported. The silence is trying to drain our power. All stations, increase output to compensate, Han Sol ordered. Across the solar system, human and keeper teams worked frantically to maintain the barrier. The silence pressed harder, sending waves of destructive force against the defenses. Station, Pluto 1 is reporting power fluctuations, So-Jin called out. Han Sol opened a communication channel. Pluto 1, this is Luna 7, what's your status? The keeper here is injured, came the reply. We're having trouble maintaining our connection to the network. This was what they had feared most. The defense system required all 47 stations to work perfectly. If even one failed, the entire barrier would collapse. Rerouting power through adjacent stations, Yunseo announced. compensating for Pluto 1's reduced output. But the silence adapted quickly. Sensing the weak point, it concentrated its attack on the area near Pluto. Dark tendrils reached through the weakened section of the barrier. Barrier breach in Sector 7, J1 reported. The silence is getting through. Hansol watched in horror as some of the silence began pouring through the gap. These weren't the large entities they had seen approaching. These were smaller, faster, like living shadows racing toward the inner planets. All defensive fleets engage the breakthrough force, Admiral Byung-ho ordered over the communication system. Human ships throughout the solar system opened fire on the invading shadows. Missiles, energy weapons, and even nuclear bombs exploded against the dark shapes. Some of the weapons had effect, slowing down the silence or forcing it to change direction, but most seemed to pass right through the enemy. "The weapons aren't working," reported one of the fleet commanders. Called by Stars spoke from his position at Luna 7's control panel. "Physical weapons cannot harm the silence directly, but they can disrupt its ability to feed." Hansol understood. The weapons weren't destroying the silence, but they were forcing it to use energy to maintain its form. Every shot made it a little weaker. "All fleets, maintain continuous fire," he ordered. "Don't let them feed on anything." The battle raged for hours. Human ships darted between the dark entities, firing constantly to keep them distracted. Meanwhile, the engineering teams worked desperately to repair the breach in the barrier. But the silence was learning. It began changing tactics, splitting into smaller pieces that were harder to target. Some of the shadow fragments reached Mars and began consuming the automated mining facilities there. "We're losing the outer colonies," Admiral Byung-ho reported, grimly. "The silence is feeding and getting stronger." Hansol felt despair creeping in. This was exactly what had happened to every other species that had tried to fight the silence. No matter how hard they fought, the enemy adapted and found a way to win. Then Mi-young spoke up from her research station. "Hansol, I have an idea. It's crazy, but it might work." "What kind of crazy?" "The silence feeds on complexity and advancement. But what if we gave it something it couldn't digest? Something so chaotic and unpredictable that it would make the silence sick?" Hansol stared at her. "What did you have in mind?" "Human creativity. Art, music, literature, games. All the random, illogical, beautiful things that humans make for no practical reason." Called by Stars turned from his control panel. "That is unprecedented. No species has ever tried to weaponize their culture." "Because no species is as weird as humans," Mi-young said with a grin. "We make things that don't make sense. We tell stories about impossible things. We create art that has no purpose except to be beautiful." Hansol thought about it. Every other species that had fought the silence had used logic and technology, but humans had something else, the ability to be completely irrational and still somehow succeed. "How would we deliver it?" he asked. "The communication network," Tae-hyun said, catching on to the idea. "We broadcast everything. Every song, every story, every piece of art humanity has ever created. We flood the silence with pure human chaos." "All stations," Hansol announced, "prepare to transmit the entire human cultural database. Every book, every song, every movie, every game, everything we've ever made that doesn't make logical sense." "Are you serious?" came a voice from one of the other stations. "Completely serious. Load everything into the transmission system." Within minutes, terabytes of human culture were streaming through the defense network. Love songs and epic poems, comedy shows and abstract art. Video games where plumbers jumped on turtles and stories about wizards fighting evil with magic wands. The effect on the silence was immediate and dramatic. The dark entities began writhing and pulling back from the transmitted data streams. Some of them actually seemed to be confused. "It's working," Yoon Seo called out in amazement. "The silence is retreating from the cultural transmissions." "Increase broadcast power," Hansol ordered. "Give them everything we've got." The humans added more content. Memes from the internet, children's nursery rhymes, sports commentary, bad poetry written by teenagers in love, random thoughts people had posted on social media. The silence recoiled as if it had been burned. The dark entities that had broken through the barrier began fleeing back toward the edge of the solar system. "Impossible," whispered one of the keepers. "In 50,000 years, nothing has ever made the silence retreat like this." But Han Sol was already thinking ahead. "This is our chance. All stations focus the barrier on pushing them out completely." The 47 defense stations worked together, reshaping the energy field from a protective shell into a massive wave that swept outward from the sun. The wave carried with it every piece of human culture they could transmit: Shakespeare and comic books, symphonies and silly videos, great literature and terrible jokes. The silence tried to resist, but it couldn't process the sheer randomness of human creativity. Every time it tried to consume something logical, it encountered something completely absurd. Scientific papers followed by recipes for cookies. Epic historical dramas mixed with cartoons about talking animals. "They're leaving," Sojin reported. "All silence entities are retreating beyond the solar system's edge."